I experienced something supernatural for the first time. Around March of this year, I went to a housing complex that was scheduled for demolition for work to remove cables. Originally, 2 of the 3 class cars had already begun to be dismantled. I arrived at the site around 4:30 p.m. and it was quite dark outside. The demolition workers had finished their work and gone home, leaving me all alone on the large site, which was a little eerie. The room to be dismantled was at the very top of a 4-story building. So after removing the wiring inside the room, when I parted the terminal board to pull out the wires that ran from the terminal board on the 1st floor to the 4th floor, 4 strands of black hair fell out. I thought it was a banknote, and when I looked more closely, I could faintly make out some characters that looked like they were drawn with a brush. So I thought it might be a banknote, but I didn't think about it too much and went back to my work. The cable ran in a straight line through the conduit, so I thought it would be easy to pull out and asked about it. At first, it came out easily, as expected, but then it suddenly got stuck on something and wouldn't come out. Having no other choice, I went up to the 3rd floor and opened the box through which the pipes ran. I could still see the wires, so I realized the blockage was somewhere between the 4th and 3rd floors. I let it do its thing and pulled hard, and a large amount of tangled hair came off with a tearing sound. Normally, something like a strand of hair wouldn't get into that pipe. As I was untangling hair from the cable, a dark red liquid began to ooze out of the pipe where I had removed the cable. Looking back now, it might have just been red water, but at the time I was in a panic and rushed downstairs to the 1st floor to grab some gums. As I pulled, more strands of hair that were tangled started to break off. Suddenly, I felt as if there was a person inside the shell above. It wasn't like a voice or footsteps, but more like breathing. I want to see it. I could tell it was getting closer by the sound echoing off the wall. Ignoring the hair that was getting tangled in my fingers, I hastily pulled out the cable and left the scene. Apparently, that housing complex has been completely demolished. I heard that A. Kun has been missing recently. I suspect they are probably deceased. When I was in 5th grade, my class went on a school trip to the Nagano area. The weather was fine that day, and a mountain climbing-like excursion was planned, heading towards the mountains a short distance from our accommodation. However, along the way, our class got a little lost. The teacher decided it was too dangerous and we turned back, but I remember that while we were still trying to figure things out, we came across a small river. There was a small shrine on the banks of that river. It didn't feel like it was near our accommodation, and it didn't look like a place deep in the mountains where people would go out of their way to visit. So we took a break, and the kids in the class started playing around. Then A. Kun, who was the class troublemaker at the time, playfully touched the shrine and accidentally knocked it down. It looks like the stones shifted and the roof-like section fell off. The teacher quickly intervened, and A. Kun tried to explain that he didn't do it on purpose, but I think everyone around him was honestly a little taken aback. After that, we continued down the mountain and returned to the bus. Just as I was about to board the bus as planned, after eating some ice cream, it suddenly started pouring rain. The timing was so perfect that someone jokingly suggested it might be a curse from the shrine, and since we were just elementary school students, we half-jokingly believed it was a curse. However, what happened immediately afterward still remains strangely vivid in my memory. The bus was supposed to head back to the accommodation and started moving, but along the way it crashed into something that was near the middle of the road. My memory of that time is vague, and I think it was something like Paul, but I might be wrong. I remember the door breaking from the impact, and the air inside the car instantly becoming cold. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. The bus somehow managed to keep going and eventually arrived at our accommodation. And after we arrived, the teacher said this. The driver said he doesn't understand why they crashed, as this is a place where accidents never normally happen. As a primary school student, I didn't understand the details, but that one sentence has strangely stuck with me. After that, the bus was changed to another vehicle, and the school camp itself continued as scheduled. Up to this point, it's simply a matter of an accident having occurred. However, what happened next was what I found strange. Strangely enough, only A. Kun began to experience a string of bad luck. First, during dinner at the school camp, a fish bone got stuck in my throat, causing a big commotion. Furthermore, some time later, despite his love for soccer, suffered a serious leg fracture in a traffic accident and was eventually unable to play properly. Of course, you could just say it's a coincidence. However, I recently heard an even more unnatural story. Apparently, A. Kun has decided to go to that shrine in Nagano. I don't know what he was thinking. Was he planning to go there, or did he want to confirm something? It seems that A-kun went there in a wheelchair, being pushed by someone, and then he fell into the river along the way. The person who was pressing the button lost consciousness at that moment, and when they came to, A was gone, according to what they said. They said there were no other people around. Student A is still missing. To be honest, I find it hard to believe that they are still alive. I was reminded once again that we shouldn't treat things like shrines lightly. I can't help but think there must be a reason why certain things are found in places that are difficult for people to reach, such as deep in the mountains or near rivers. Everyone, please be careful in places like that. Someone from Tohoku went fly fishing in the opposite direction of summer. After fishing for a while, I completely lost my line and went to the river when night fell. There were quite a few fish biting, so I mischievously continued fishing, and suddenly the river opened up, revealing a spot that looked very promising for fishing. I cast my line, intending to wrap up the day here, when suddenly a flurry of fireflies began to dance around. The fireflies flitted about as if they were bubbling up from the river itself, enveloping the river in a magical atmosphere. Just as I was thinking how unusual it was to see so many fireflies, I heard human voices coming from the river. At first, the voice was so quiet that you couldn't hear it unless you strained your ears, but gradually, the voice grew louder and I was able to understand what it was saying. If you listen carefully, it seems the voice was saying that a little girl had gone missing in the area and that the neighbors were about to go out to search for her. He said he was pretty scared at that point, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he kept going, swinging his rod. The voices sounded like they were from a TV drama, and it was clear that they could distinguish between the voice of a woman believed to be the missing girl's mother and the voice of a villager who had been asked to help with the search. Eventually, the voice entered the house boundary, and the villagers' voices said something to the effect of, "Let's search here last." At that moment, it sounded as if an invisible search operation was taking place right before their eyes. Apparently, the sound continued to come from the river, as if they were watching some kind of recorded video. The conversation sounded so real coming from the otherwise empty river that the person finally became frightened and asked, "What's going on? Is someone there? Who's missing?" At that very moment. It is said that the sounds of a woman's unbearable screams, including moans and shrieks, were heard. The scream completely frightened the man, and before he could even finish folding his pole, he ran off down the now dark road in the opposite direction from the person he had encountered. After wandering around for a while, I saw the lights of a house nearby. I just wanted to hear someone's voice, so I rushed into the house dressed like a suspicious person. "I'm sorry." When I asked, "Is anyone there?" a hunched-over old woman came out from the back. I was really thirsty, so I asked for some water, and Asan brought me a glass of water. I even asked for a second helping. After drinking 2 glasses of water, I started to feel calmer. The old woman asked what had happened, so the person apologized for the rude visit and gave a messy, detailed explanation of what had just happened. Then the old woman, far from being able to lie down for the rest of her life, held it tightly, her eyes narrowed and squeezed it out. "Oh, so the fireflies have come out again," he reportedly murmured sadly. According to the old woman, a family who had moved from another prefecture used to build a house and live near that river. The family was so close-knit that other families envied them. It consisted of the parents and one child who was about 3 years old. One day, the daughter of that family went out to play and never came back. Villagers searched desperately, but it was said that people occasionally went missing in that village, and those missing people were usually found dead in the river. When evening came and they still hadn't found their daughter, the villagers searched the river in a state of near despair. Indeed, the girl was found floating face down in the river where fireflies were flitting about. The moment the villagers turned their eyes away, the mother splashed into the river, hugging her dead daughter and letting out an unbearable scream. Ultimately, the family, having lost their daughter, soon demolished their house and left for somewhere else. Since then, stories have been heard of people having frightening encounters with ghosts near that river. It is said that this always happens in the evening during the summer in Saki, precisely at the time when fireflies begin to fly. From what the old woman told me, it seemed I wasn't the first person to have suddenly changed their mind and come running into this house. After listening to the old woman's story, the person felt not so much fear as a strange, almost certain and poignant sadness. That's because the river where I was fishing was a slightly curved river that formed a deep eddy. "I see. I was certain that if someone had been swept away upstream of that river, their body would surely float there. After finishing her story, the old woman, with a pained expression on her face, retreated to the back of the house and never came out again. In the end, the person thanked them towards the back of the house, quietly placed the cup by the front door, and left. Because of that incident, the person has since stopped fishing before the time when fireflies begin to appear.